you come from. Here we go. About Hey everybody, happy Friday. Oh my
Woo!
gosh, I'm so woo. Yeah, let's get some energy going. I am so excited, you all. Today I have Dr. Steven Kirch coming in all the way from the San Francisco Bay Area, where I'm sure it is sunny. Yes,
Oh, yeah,
and
absolutely.
beautiful. Absolutely. And Dr. Steven Kirch, you all, is just amazing. When I first met this man, we just stayed on the phone and we talked about how committed we are to taking coaching into other communities, communities beyond our own, racially, economically, geographically, communities in other countries. And I have to tell you, Dr. Steven comes to us with over 30 years of experience in process systems and processes at IBM and Intel. He was in on all the tech stuff that went on, right? Dr. Steven, you are a leader in all that tech boom, and that is his background. And now, for the last how many years, Dr. Steven?
7 years now I've been
7
coaching.
years, he has dedicated his life and his work to coaching. He is involved in an incredible organization called the Gratitude Network. We're definitely going to talk about that. But you all, you need to stay on here. Why? Because there are gifts. There are gifts. Did I say my favorite four-letter word? Free gifts at the end of the program. So you got to stay on. Make sure you share this and subscribe. And daggone it, y'all, go to my YouTube and subscribe, okay? I keep forgetting to ask everyone to do that. We want to bring you every single Friday incredible guests who will help you boost your business, inspire you, make you take some freaking gentle butt kicking action. That's what we want to do, right, Stephen?
Gentle butt kicking. That's what I need. No,
Well,
wait.
that's what we're going to give them, is some gentle butt kicking today. I'm so happy you're here, Stephen. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for coming. And Dr. Stephen, would you tell us, first of all, tell us why you love what you do now?
What- I love what I do now because I get the opportunity to help people. And really, coaching is kind of an interesting art. I actually call myself a coach saltant because
Interesting.
because sometimes I'm coaching and I'm, you know, using the Socratic method and helping, asking important questions and sometimes I just got to tell them what to do.
Yeah.
Uh,
I love that. And the distinction being the coach is using the Socratic method in questioning, and the consultant is like, do this.
do this, yeah.
I
And
love
and
that.
you know sometimes we just get frustrated because there's so many options and you don't know where to go and you don't know what to do and so but by the same token, especially when you're going to communities that are different from your own, you don't know enough about their culture. Look, I'm an old white guy, right? And I've lived in the United States my entire life. I grew up in the Great Heartland in the state of Ohio, and then spent some time in New York working for IBM. And then, I have a bi-coastal sort of existence here as an
Mhm.
adult. Then spent the last 30 plus years here in California. And we live in a bubble and we don't really understand what's going on in other places. So asking questions and being curious
Mm.
is really, really important.
I love that, Stephen. Dr. Stephen, that is having curiosity. And it's something that I really resonated with you, as you are so extremely curious. We're obviously curious people in all senses of the words, because we did PhDs. You got to be curious to do
Oh
that, to
man.
keep going. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But you also are so humble. You have so much humility in the way that you approach people. And that is so important when we're going into any community. Like when I was doing volunteer work in Zimbabwe and Botswana and the west coast of Africa, in Ivory Coast, Cote d'Ivoire, that was and Peru and Mexico, there's so many places. That was so important for me to come with humility and just a desire to learn, not a desire to teach or colonize.
Yeah, we can do that.
Whoa, yeah. Oh, Lordy, land's a living. Oh, wait, leave that on. Leave that on.
Okay.
Would you leave that on? Okay. Now
Yeah.
let me just slap you. All right. I love that hat. Where in the heck did you come up with that? That's
Amazon has everything.
Amazon.
It's great.
This is so good. So you
Doesn't
all
quite fit, but
you see the
what can I say?
colonist hat here. There's a reason why we got independence from that little island over across the way. I just came back from the little island, actually, Stephen.
Yeah.
I was in London town just a couple of weeks ago. But we got independence for a reason. Because why? We wanted freedom, because we wanted our own religious freedom, our freedom of speech, our freedom to be who we wanted to be. And I think the same is true of the communities in which we share our coaching. What does everybody really want? They want to be free, right? Free to express who they are. What do you think, Dr. Steven?
Yeah, absolutely. The organizations that we work with at the Gratitude Network, they are working to improve the lives of children and youth around the world. We've been in over 60 countries, and helping them help the next generation, whether it's education or health and wellness or children's rights, dealing with sex abuse.
Yes.
Trafficking. And sex trafficking.
Yes.
Yeah, they're just amazing organizations. But you're right. What they want fundamentally is the ability to determine the direction of their own lives.
Yeah.
Right? That's what education does for you.
Well,
opens up.
Well, can I be contrarian with you, Dr. Steven?
No.
Oh, well, I'm going to be. So that's why you're on bold, badass business owners. But seriously, education done right opens windows in the mind. But education done according to a canon that is controlled by the hegemonies in the world, i.e. North America in the United States and white males and, et cetera, that a canon that represents, for example, a literary canon that represents that group is limited. And when I taught women's studies and I taught cross-curricular studies, I always started with like one guy in a women's studies class. And the next time there would be 30% of the class would be men. Why, Dr. Steven? Because I was like, you guys are going to have a leg up on everyone else because you understand what it is to be a global citizen.
That's so true. And when I said education, what I meant was true education.
Yeah.
Right?
Tell us what that is.
Not brainwashing.
Thank you.
Right. And there are efforts around this country today to control what's in a library and what you can read, what's available to you, as if they're afraid somehow that this knowledge would cause them to, upset the power balance.
Right. And I had some kids' parents who would say, why are you reading da da da? And I would say, well, I'm not endorsing any idea in it. It's something we're studying. We're studying.
We're going to ask questions about it.
Yeah, we're going to ask questions and we're going to think about it and we're going to respond to it. But I'm not endorsing.
Is this true? Have you seen it true? Have you seen it to be true? Where have you seen it to be true? Where have you seen it to be not true?
And how does this open your mind to another possible reality?
That's so important that those questions are asked and allowed to be asked.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Allowed to be asked.
Yeah.
So I love that.
But it's really hard to escape who you are and truly put on that explorer's hat.
Oh my God, Steven, you are so speaking to me right now. Can I tell you?
Give me a minute.
Story? Oh yeah, put that explorer's hat on.
Put the other hat on.
Right? I love it.
Does it look like Indiana Jones, right?
It does. You put Harrison Ford to shame.
Well, I don't know about that, but
Yeah.
but
The explorer hat. Tell us about the explorer hat versus the colonizer's hat, you know?
well, I think the perception is, and this is probably unfair to the colonizers because they thought they were doing what was the right thing and the best interest of the people that are being colonized, right? They're bringing them culture and they're bringing them,
Mm,
civilization
mm,
and, you know, but in
mm.
reality, there was so much culture and civilization and
Yeah,
discovering, like in this country, the indigenous peoples and the rich culture that they have,
yeah.
and their connection with Earth.
And rich cultures, because if
Yes,
you look
yes, yeah,
at, say, the
multiple cultures,
Lumbees
right?
near
Oh,
me,
yes.
the Lumbee tribe here, or some of the Cherokees who are still in the North Carolina, they're completely different from
Oh, yeah,
some of
absolutely.
the Native Americans closer to you in California, you know? I think we have this points out something actually that we do often, and I do the same thing. Like I'll refer to Africa. I'll say, well, you know, in
Oh my gosh.
Africa. And then I have to realize, whoa, Barnsley, stop. Zimbabwe is completely different from the Ivory Coast. And my experience in both countries was completely different. And so we have a tendency, you all, even when we don't want to lump people together. So we'll say stuff like, well, white people or black people or Asian people or Hispanics and or Mexicans. How many times have I heard people in this country say Mexicans? And what they're talking about is anybody who speaks Spanish who's not from Spain.
Right. Yeah.
And
And
sorry, Peruvian culture is completely different from Mexican culture, Ecuadorian, completely different. Every different country in South and Central
but
America is distinct.
but that's true of the white folk here in the United States.
Yes, it is. It's true on a state level. Yes. And it's true
Well,
in Europe.
absolutely, right, and Europeans, they don't have one culture. The Germans,
Mm-mm.
the Italians, the Austrians, and the French, and the Spanish, and
Yeah.
for hundreds of years, they've, you know, developed their very rich cultures. And
But you know what
and
happened, Stephen? I got to say something.
what's that,
Mm.
Dr. Barnsley?
I got to say this. All right. I was just in Barcelona, or as they say, Barcelona.
I was actually there in May.
Barcelona.
Is
Were
this,
you? Oh,
yeah.
God, I loved it. It's totally dangerous, but I really loved it. I saw people like robbed while I was there. I loved it. It's such an amazing place. So here's the thing. There was the big statue of Christopher Columbus. And you all, I know we celebrate Columbus Day, but in case you haven't figured it out, he did not discover America. There were indigenous peoples here long before Christopher Columbus. All right. Number one. Number two, how did we all get lumped together as white people, for instance? This was created to create a hegemony in this country. So when people came in from France, from Germany, from Romania, from wherever, in Eastern or in Europe or Norway, whatever, United
Yep.
Kingdom, we lumped everybody together. Why? Because it creates a hegemony. Think about it. And then that's power. So the
That's right.
construction of whiteness is really interesting. We're going to offend a lot of people today, Stephen. Let's just
Good.
I hope I'm challenging your ideas, y'all. And I hope, what are you hearing so far? Have you ever, for example, those of you watching, have you ever made an assumption about somebody because they're from, they have a different color than you on the outside, right? Or they're from a country that you're not familiar with, or maybe you're only familiar with that country from what gets portrayed in the media, and you assume that all people from that country may be that way, right? Who's guilty of that? I'm raising my hand.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, the same could be true about the assumptions that you're making about white people.
Yeah. Oh,
They're not
yeah.
all the same either. The
They're
whole
not on the
point
same.
here, the whole point here is to get curious,
To
right?
get curious and have
Understand
humility.
who,
Yeah.
yes, understand who that individual is and what he or she brings to the table. What what incredible value each unique individual has.
You're speaking my language. Every voice matters. That is one of my fundamental tenets in life. And I remember you and I talking about that, that every voice matters. So let's give some nuts and bolts here because people are watching. I'm glad y'all are here. Don't be internet voyeurs. We can see you. Make a comment. What are you hearing that you're like, wow, or you're offended, or you think it's super great? Just put it up there. Give us some likes, y'all. Don't be quiet. The more you give to us in terms of the energy, the more we give you. So make some comments, y'all. No hiding behind those cameras. So let me ask you a nuts and bolts question, Dr. Steven. I know you have so much experience coaching people and you do work with the Gratitude Network. And as you said, y'all are in over 60 countries in the world. So what are some questions when you're going in to such a community, a different community than your own? What are some questions that you really need to ask before you can, or while you effectively coach someone?
Well, I think the first place that you have to go is you have to understand what's important to the individual, right? What is it that matters to you? What are your values? What are the behaviors that are important to you as an individual? Not even necessarily culturally,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but but right, what makes you tick? Where do you derive joy? Where do you where do you find passion? Um, and then you can get in. Once you understand a little bit, and that's obviously a conversation, right? It's not one question. And the other important thing is because many of these people are not native English speakers. So you need to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that you understand the word and maybe you need to parrot it back a little bit. And so what I'm hearing you say is,
Mm,
and say it back in different words so that it's really clear that you understand or are at least trying to understand what they mean. Uh, and 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 then you can start to engage in a conversation of how can I help,
mm,
right? But
mhm.
until you understand where they want to go, right, how do you know what to help them with? How do you
Right.
know, right? Um, and again, it's really incredibly important to ask questions at every turn.
Mhm.
Don't assume that you know anything.
I think this is so true because, we have when we're going into a culture, for example, when I was in Peru, and I used to be married to a Peruvian, one of my in-laws said to me, "Wow, your books on prosperity are really needed here. We don't have any of this information." And it made me realize that something that I really take for granted that we talk about in this country and in my area of this country, the law of attraction, how to manifest what you want, how to use your wealth, etc., that this is not common knowledge in certain countries. And it made me, so a lot of the assumptions that I had that were so off in terms of what people would know. That's the other thing that really
Mm,
surprises me. So never take for granted what I'm saying, those of you watching, is never take for granted what you know, because you may have something that is really, it's not so revolutionary here in the United States, but when you go to Japan with that, or you go to Somalia with that, it's absolutely revolutionary and it opens people's lives up to something more.
yeah, that you can't on the flip side of that, if I may, Dr. Barnsley,
Yeah,
um,
flip it like a
you you
pancake.
you can't assume that what works here in the States will work there, right?
Mhm.
And that's why it's real exploratory activity. You really need to explore uh, what it is. Hey, have you thought or have you tried something like this? Have you thought about the problem in this way? What's at the root of it? I love the 5 whys process,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where you just keep asking why,
Mm-hmm.
and you just keep asking why. Well, why is that? And okay, well then why is that? And then what is that? Why is that? And keep going until you get to the real root of the issue. But that's a real explorer sort of mentality.
Right. And it's really interesting because the explorer, if we are going to take that distinction you gave us earlier between the coach and the coach is asking lots of questions and probing and excavating, excavating like an archaeological site, like Indiana Jones. And the consultant is really more telling and prescribing as a colonist would be,
Hmm.
right?
That's
Yeah.
right.
And both
You
both
mean to
of these
change hats?
approaches are important. Yeah, you get to change back and forth. So it's good once we have done a lot of the exploration, then we can also put on that consultant hat, right? Kind of like the colonist and prescribe something, but with the humility and without wiping out their culture,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because that's the first thing that happened in colonialism is you go in and you destroy somebody's language and you make them speak English or French,
And take your religion.
and get rid of their history, their pictorial history. I was so sad when I went to see the Incan ruins and the Mayan ruins. There's nothing left of the pictorial history because it was burned,
Yeah,
right? The history, like our history books, was burned,
yeah.
you know, and that's what the colonizer does. So we want to make sure that when we're being a consultant and we are eventually prescribing or suggesting something for someone to do, that we're doing it in a context that is respectful and honoring of the other culture, right?
That's so true. And when I do consulting, I I won't say never because never is a too harsh, but I really try not to really prescribe, but
Mm-hmm.
more it's have you thought about this approach? Or have you tried something like this? Or um, you know, so giving that as a well, I know exactly how to solve your problem. Just do this.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
But sometimes, upon occasion,
yeah,
the
okay.
here's what's needed is sometimes that
But
is
sometimes it's just a
important.
kick in the butt.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes it's just, yeah, look, just do this. And if it doesn't work, we'll change it.
All right. Right.
So there can be that too. But I think this is a very rich discussion because when we're coaching anyone, we're always really playing in those different realms. So we're explorer, we're consultant, we're inquisitive outside viewpoint, basically. We're all of that together.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's trying to figure out how to strike that balance that I think is the magic of being a coach. Um,
Yes. And we
that
F it up, don't we, Dr. Stephen? We F it up.
I never do. Speak for yourself, Dr. Barnsley.
There's the
Uh,
colonizer coming
yeah,
out.
exactly,
You're
exactly.
totally right.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, we
of
do, and
course.
everyone does. We're human.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I think to some extent that's why they call it a practice.
right. Right. Yes. I like that. We're practicing. We're always
It's a
practicing.
coaching practice, right?
Mhm.
So
Very true.
yeah.
Very true. So tell us, Dr. Stephen, when you and I talked about this topic, I thought it was very rich and it's very important. And it applies not just to going, say to other countries, but it also applies to going different places within your own country, like from here to the north, from here to the east and west coast, very different cultures, right?
That's right.
The way people are is very different. I always hear people who come here saying to me, and I'm a native Southerner, though I've traveled many, many places, I have people say, I really like the slow pace around here. And I don't really see the slow pace, but for them, it's the fact that there's not a lot of traffic. There aren't a lot of people around everywhere walking around like in New York City or Chicago. And they equate that to a slower paced, I think. So from what they're saying, but in terms of my life is not slow paced at all. But
Mhm.
you see, it's like this perception thing. So when we go into other communities and they might be economically different, maybe we're working with, I know that you do a lot of work with what we could call underprivileged youth, youth who don't have all the privilege and opportunities that many people do in the United States. So what are some of the other things that we need to keep in mind as we go in so we don't come across as, you know, Napoleon?
I think the most important thing is to be authentically human
Mm,
and to respect the humanity of the other person that you're talking to.
mm,
To not think that in any way you are better than they are.
mhm.
It's a different perspective. It's not a better one. And that goes for even people who have, dare I say it, political differences, right? I mean, it's one of the things that frustrates me so much about the language that's flying around today, about this us and them mentality.
Right.
And somebody who disagrees with you is stupid, or somebody who has a different opinion from you is just wrong
Or ignorant.
or ignorant,
Yeah.
or right. And it's you have to. I think this is a Native American thing. Walk a mile in their moccasins, right?
Hmm.
um, you really need to understand where they're coming from and how did they get to that place?
Hmm.
And again, it's exploring. I'm
Yes.
going
So
to
let's put that explorer
change,
hat back
I'm going to
on.
change hats again. I love this. This hat's much more comfortable.
Yes. Now,
I wear
isn't
this
that
out
it?
in the sun. It's actually it's a Tilly. It's Canadian.
It's awesome. Well,
It's
um, just the word, the language that we use is so important. As you point out, the us and them,
mhm.
and things that we might say, like, I live in America. Well, actually, you live in the United States, and there are three Americas. In case you haven't noticed, there's South America, Central America, and North America, folks. And so this is why when I used to teach American literature, the first day I was like, this is not American literature. This is not an American literature class. What class is this? How many Americas are there? And it was really super sad because, my American students, United States students, did not know. They didn't. They didn't know.
Wow.
And this is where we see that our education is completely biased and creates a hegemony that we're North America. Okay, we're North America, excluding Canada and Mexico, right? So you all, let's get really clear about our language. It's the same reason that I never use. I hate the term third world. There are many other terms I could talk about, but third world is just not acceptable because who is the first world and who is the second world?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it sets up a hierarchy, and every voice matters. So we've got to be conscious of our language, which assumes hierarchies that are often hidden.
Yeah. That's really interesting. My daughter is in the AI space, in what they call natural language processing.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the challenges that they face is that it's really, I mean, think, like Siri,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
or the other. I could say that one because I don't have that kind of device in my room right now. But if I say the other ones, then we'll start a
I'll start
conversation.
talking.
Yeah. Um, but all of those models are based on essentially North American white English.
Whoa. Oh,
the
okay.
educational, the
Oh,
proper English, right? And so one of
oh.
the authors working on is on a white paper on linguistic justice.
Oh my
And
goodness,
and
I love that term.
how do you make sure that these AI things, right, are able to understand and communicate in ways that reach across cultures?
Mhm.
It's not just, going from North American white English to French or German or whatever, but it's all of the different dialects within the United States. And whether you're talking about inner city cultures, the Hispanic culture, the African American culture, the we can talk about Appalachia, or we can all different kinds
Creole
of
culture, there's so many
in the
different cultures.
South, in
Yeah.
the Northeast.
Louisiana
Um,
Louisiana Creoles. We can talk about Defusky Island. We can talk about the Outer Banks of here in North Carolina. I can't
yeah,
understand what
absolutely.
the heck they're talking about when I go there. I'm like,
Yeah,
"What?"
right. And
Mm.
yeah, it's really interesting, and it's also an economic argument, right? Because if you broaden the base so that more people are understood, you broaden the economic opportunity as well.
All right, now you gotta say that again. That's some pure genius right there. Say it again, Dr. Steven. If you
So
broaden.
yeah, if you broaden the range of people who will be understood, you
Mhm.
broaden the economic opportunity for the company that does it and does it right.
For AI, for
For
artificial
AI.
intelligence. Yeah.
Yes.
I love that. I had never, yeah, my mind is blown right now because I had never really thought about the fact that AI truthfully is representing more of the North American United States, uh,
White,
white,
proper,
proper, quote unquote English.
educational English,
It's not
right?
representing Creole. It's not representing Ebonics. It's not representing different Spanglish, as I call it. Some Hispanic cultures that
Mhm.
incorporate both English and Spanish. It's not representing that. And so, really, you all, as we think about this, we got to think about who's being represented at the table. You know, who's being represented at the table, and if somebody's not represented in AI, how can that be a tool that would allow them to actually increase their business?
Right. Or
You
increase
know,
their
it,
efficiency of
or
anything,
efficiency of
right?
anything, right? Brainstorming, whatever. It's not going to make sense. And it's the repository of culture is always language. This is why, to get back to the colonizers, the first thing they did was wipe out the different dialects of the place
Force
they were going, or
and force
languages,
them to
and
speak the
forced to speak
language that they
English or
have.
French or
Yeah,
whatever colonizer they were, right?
right.
Because they were, they wanted to absorb those cultures into their own. Yep. Now we put that colonizer hat on. So I want to think, all right, let's take this into another, as we continue and as we just begin to wrap. We're not wrapping for a little while, but as we begin to think about that, something I think is interesting about this is that when you are in business, you really need to speak the languages of different cultures. All right. And I have had people who were like, I don't speak any Spanish. I don't need to learn Spanish. And let me just say that that is stupid.
Tell us how you really feel, Dr. Barnsley.
Let me just say that is stupid. And let me say that by 2050, for sure, this country is going to be bilingual. And if you don't believe me, just go to Bank of America and look at the fact that everything is in Spanish and English, and look at any major corporation stuff is in Spanish and English. You go through to get the teller machine is going to be Spanish and English, people. You get stuck with that electronic, you call some company, you're going to get Spanish and English. Why? Because by 2015, Spanish and English this country will be bilingual. So if you're not learning Spanish, that's just pure dumb. Or if you're not having someone who speaks Spanish working with you, who can communicate with people who have Spanish as their primary language and don't speak a lot of English, you are leaving money on the table.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I
Again,
don't care
it's an
how you
economic
feel about
argument.
Hispanic people. I don't care how you feel about Mexicans or Peruvians or Ecuadorians, or I don't give a shit. Did I say it? Yes, I don't
You
give a
did.
shit what you think about them, whether they're good, bad, they're lazy, whatever notions you have about them. Let me just say that you're leaving money on the table. Well, go ahead, leave that money on the table, because that's more for me. Because guess what? I speak Spanish. Guess what? I have clients who are a diverse range of clients. It's one of the things I pride myself on, because I believe every voice matters.
Yeah.
What do you think,
That,
Dr.
that,
Stephen?
that's so wonderful and so true. Um, I am learning Spanish. I don't know it yet, but it's
Mhm.
even at my
Making an
advanced
effort.
age. Yeah.
But see, even
Um,
if you can't learn it, like my dear mother, she tries to learn Spanish. She's tried her whole life. She's now like 81, 82, never could learn it. But she tried. But see, she could still have someone who could speak Spanish to communicate with people who are
Absolutely.
Spanish speakers.
That's
You
right.
don't have to even learn it. Just know that your stuff needs to be translated eventually, especially if you're a big corporation working with a large group. You got to have stuff in Spanish and English. You need a translator.
Yeah. Absolutely. So let's go back to the the
Yeah, let's
explorer hat.
do. That colonist thing is heavy. Man,
Yeah.
I have to tell you, I went to the Museum of the Inquisition in Peru, Dr.
Oh
Stephen.
man.
Oh man, you want to talk about seeing some of the stuff that was done by the colonizers? They have those long, some of it just was creepy. And it's you see the dungeons where people were, and the torture equipment that was used in the name of colonization, where they would put people on like a big wooden table, and they would just pour water into their mouths until they drowned. Yeah, that one was really creepy. So
Wow.
these are things done in the name of colonization. So many countries, so many things have been, so
Yeah.
many people have been killed in the name of colonization. We have to bring that forward. That's
And
very
and,
important.
and yet we as a species seem to be able to rise above that.
Yeah.
I'll point to the experience of Nelson Mandela in South Africa.
Hmm.
I was there a few years ago,
Yeah.
and saw his you know where he was held in this little tiny room
Yeah.
in this island prison, and and yet he came out of that
Hmm.
not with a spirit of retribution,
Right.
but one of healing.
Hmm.
And looking at what he went through he was in prison for 25 years for nothing.
Yeah. And think about the Dalai Lama, one of my favorite figures,
Hmm.
exiled from Tibet, from his home country. And this essentially, actually, though it was awful, has made him into a world spiritual leader.
Right.
There is an amazing, since you mentioned Nelson Mandela, I don't know if you've read this amazing book between uh, Desmond Tutu and Nelson Mandela, in which they're talking. They were,
They were
friends.
friends. Yes.
Yeah. And it's just so powerful, the discussion of forgiveness. Um, and it's so powerful that these folks, that Nelson Mandela was able to come out without that revenge orientation, because
Hatred.
all his energy was focused on forward, on good, on let's create peace, let's see what are the commonalities in all human beings, you know because revenge, rancor, and retribution, and lack of forgiveness, guess what? They take up room in our brains. They absorb our energy. And
It's
so there is
all
a
negative
moment,
energy.
yes, there's a moment where we have to stop saying, like I say to my female clients, I work a lot with women in my mastermind, my Make It Happen mastermind. I say, look, there's a point where we have to assume that not only are there some glass ceilings that still exist in the world, and it's really hard to see them. Yes, they're often hidden. It's like friendly sexism. Someone's nice to you to your face, and then you hear they say something about you. Wow, she's quite a pushy broad behind your back, for instance.
Which
Not
they
that
would
I've
never
had
say.
anybody say that about me.
But they would never say that about a man. They would
Yeah,
say
he's
he's
assertive.
assertive.
Yeah, he's assertive. He's a go-getter.
That's
He's a
right.
go-getter, Dr. Steven. But what I say to everybody is we've got to own our own glass ceilings. So yes, there is still that glass ceiling. We cannot deny the fact that women are still on average paid 79 cents on a man's dollar. Man's paid $1, woman 79 cents. If you're a woman of color, it dips down even lower. However, we also as women put glass ceilings over ourselves. And this is true in communities of different communities. We've been talking about some of the Native American tribes, and we've been talking about different African cultures and different Hispanic cultures today, for instance. We've got to realize, you all of us, that we matter and come from that place. And guess what, Dr. Steven, you might be a white male.
I might be.
But you matter too, all right?
Do I?
You matter too, right? And what I really enjoyed when I first met you is that you are open-minded, and we can have this conversation, and we can talk about the fact that white males have been the hegemony, and you're not trying to disprove that. You're agreeing. You know.
Yeah. I live a very privileged life.
Me
And it's
too.
because of where I was brought up and how I was brought up and the educational opportunities that I had
Yeah.
presented to me, and the economics of that.
Yeah.
Have I worked hard? Yes.
Yes.
But it isn't all a product of my hard work.
Yeah. So why is it? Let's go here for a second. Oh, this is a good question. Why is it that human nature tends to trust people who look like us or talk like us or dress like us or act like us?
Well, I think I know the answer to this because I mean there was a class that we had at Intel that I learned to teach. It was called Micro Inequities.
Cool.
And this is more than 10 years ago, right? I left Intel 7 years ago. And so I'm going to guess maybe even 12 or 13 years ago. So 2010, 2011, this was our DEI class. DEI wasn't really a thing back then.
Tell people what DEI is in case anyone doesn't know.
Yeah, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it was all about how little tiny actions that people take really have a negative impact on other folk. I think the most powerful, and I'll get to the answer to your question in a minute.
Give us an example of some of those micro inequities, would you? I love that term, by the way. That's cool.
So we did this exercise. Every manager in Intel was required to take this class, by the way. You would pair up A and B, and the A person was instructed for the next 3 minutes, tell person B all about a project that you were incredibly successful at. It was so much fun. It was life-changing, something, the most successful project that you've ever been involved in. Right? Person B who's listening is told not to pay attention.
Ooh.
To look at their phone, to look around the room, look at their watch, everything, to not pay attention. Do you have any idea how hard it is to tell a coherent story even about something of which you're very proud when the person across the table is not paying attention? It's incredibly difficult. And then we switched roles, and person B was to describe a place where they're struggling, a place where they could use some help, and maybe even a place where they didn't perform as well as they had hoped. And person A was now supposed to listen intently and be very concerned, very supportive. And how that changed the performance of the person, even though they were talking about something where they didn't really do very well. The point of this exercise, and you understand this, Dr. Barnsley, but I want to make sure that's clear to all the people who are watching and listening. the point of this exercise is that I, as a manager, had incredible power over the person who was talking to me based
Mm.
on how engaged I was in the
Yes.
conversation,
Yes, yes,
and that
yes,
they would
yes.
live up or down to my expectations. So if I come into a one-to-one with an employee who's really not a very good performer, and I really am not enjoying being there, and my body language will show it, whether or not no matter how good a liar I am, my
Yeah.
and they will live down to that expectation.
Mm. Yes, it reminds me of that study that is so often cited about two different teachers. And one teacher, both teachers were given equal groups of students, but one teacher was told the students were extraordinary, they were gifted, they were just geniuses. The other teacher were told they were slow. And guess how the students performed?
Right.
Teacher
Or you
A,
split a
great.
class with the
Yes,
same teacher, right? You split a class, and if you identify these students, whether they're gifted or not, you do randomly and say these students are not very good and these students are really good. By the end of a week or two or three of the ones that were identified as good will outperform the ones, even if they came in all at the same level,
I love
right?
that. And you know
So
what? Let's take this into quantum physics for a second. Let's go to quantum physics. Why not?
sure, sure,
You know, waves and particles. Remember Einstein's particle theories? He
yeah,
said that actually
I
the
studied some of them.
observer can impact the movement of the particles. Now, think about it. What are we? We're matter. We are particles. We are
We are
energy.
matter and energy.
Exactly. Matter is energy. And so think about it. The power of our listening, the power of our engagement, the power of our caring, which is another word for love, actually caring and loving other people, the power of that is tremendous.
Incredible. Absolutely is.
And especially when someone is coming from, say, being the only whatever, the only woman, the only Asian, the only native Spanish speaker, the only whatever, the only white
Yeah.
person, even. One of the greatest things for me about doing volunteer work in Africa multiple times is I got to have the experience of being a quote unquote minority in certain ways. Okay. And I say that in certain ways because obviously I had money enough to go and do this volunteer work, blah, blah, blah. But I got to be the person who would go in and say, oh, look, here I am. And I'm a light face in a sea of darker faces. What a great experience. Reminds me of Ntozake Shange,
Yeah.
the playwright. She said, look, if you're complaining about my in your face, an African American playwright, loved her, loved her,
Oh,
loved
yeah.
her. And if you are complaining about the violence and the hard stuff in my place, such as how colored girls, well, I got the title wrong now. Oh gosh. Colored girls who committed suicide when the rainbow is enough. That's most of the title. And
Mm.
anyway, four colored girls who committed suicide when the rainbow was enough. What a powerful work. And she said, so you're uncomfortable, you who are not African American, you who are not female and not having the experiences of being in my body the way I am. Guess what? Well, you can go to my play and you can sit in my play for 2 hours and be uncomfortable because the rest of the time, guess what? You're not. And I am.
And I am. Yeah. Wow.
It just gives me
So
chills when I think about it. And I got to meet her, Stephen, and it's pretty funny. She was at this table of luminaries, all African American luminaries, and I was at this conference. I literally went up to her and she was so gracious. I knelt at her side and I said, I adore you. One of my chapters of my dissertation is being published about you. I love your work. Would you please sign these things? And she was very kind to me. Here I am interrupting her with all of her friends. And she's like, who's this little white girl? Well, that's maybe what she was thinking. By the way, you all, are you sure I'm white? Just saying.
yeah, that's an interesting question.
Are you sure I'm white? Because let me just say something. We talked about earlier the construction of whiteness in this episode, all of you who are watching. And the statistic is that 92% of the people from the South have mixed blood. Yeah, that's all of us. So you might look
Yeah.
black, you might look white,
And
you might
and
look
and
yellow, whatever you are.
yeah. Oh, by the way, there are the whole construction of white black was completely artificial.
Yeah. Tell
Um,
us more about that. That's cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it was really invented to allow the enslavement of one set of people from another set of people by another set of people,
Yes.
right? And to provide this hegemony, as you say, right?
To
The
create it,
Yeah, to create it,
to
right? To
undergird it.
justify mistreatment of people.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you something, Dr. Steven. Now we're going to get really deep here. I want y'all to know a lot of people don't know this. Did you realize that some of the original slaves were also white who were being persecuted for their religion? A lot of people don't know that. And I don't know the statistic, but there were originally some white slaves too. Now, why did it become completely racialized? For exactly the reason you're talking about.
Yeah. So
To create a
anyway,
hegemony that has power over
yes,
others. Yeah.
back to your question about our brains and why we favor people that look like us.
Talk like us, dress like us,
Yeah, yeah. Well,
our particular gender or gender
it's
orientation.
because we have a bias in our brain towards similarity,
There we go. We
right?
have a
And
bias in our brains
we
towards
have to
similarity.
acknowledge that
Mm-hmm.
and then say, despite the fact that my brain is wired that way, I will not act out of that because
I
I
will
have
not
the
give in.
capacity. I have the capacity to decide how I'm going to act based on the way my brain works. The only time that that's not true is when our lives are in danger, physically in danger, right?
Okay. I got to
And
pause you. I got to pause you. This is powerful. I want everyone to hear this. All right. You need to get out of your comfort zone. So we all have this bias. Like we want to be around people who are like us, look like us, talk like us, whatever. So we like our little insular communities. Well, here's your challenge, everybody, for this week. I want you to invite somebody, as one of my favorite authors would say, someone dangerous to lunch. Ooh. And what I
how
mean
about
by
that?
that, how is that? What I mean by that is that someone just different from you. It's dangerous to invite them because maybe they're from another culture. Maybe your country and their country are fighting. Maybe they're a different religion than you. And you're really adamant that your religion is great and they're really adamant that theirs is great. Well, invite that person to lunch and break bread with them and talk with them. I dare you. I dare
And
you. Then you're the explorer.
get curious.
Yes. Get out of your comfort zone. This is what we've got to do in business. And when we're not doing it, Dr. Steven, we are leaving money on the table. So,
Absolutely.
like, again, I don't care what you think of other people, but the economic reasons for being a global citizen and valuing all people are huge. All right. So, at least maybe you'll think about the money part of it if you don't think about the fact that, as I like to say, if you take away our skin, we're all the same underneath. I'm going to tear up right now. You're making me cry. Dr. Steven, I'm crying on my bold badass show. But seriously, you know, and I'm so glad we're having this conversation because getting out of your comfort zone in your business, getting out of your comfort zone in your life, these are the keys to exploding any glass ceilings that you have above you, that you've constructed above you or around you,
Yeah. Any
walls,
constraints
any
you put,
constraints.
whether you're a man or a woman, you put constraints on yourself.
Yes, gay, straight, trans,
Doesn't matter.
whatever you are. Oh
Whatever
my God.
label you want,
Okay,
right?
wait, I have to tell you something. Oh my God, Stephen. When I was in a very hot airport in this odyssey that my daughter and I just took, I sat down. I literally was going to lay down on the floor because I thought I was going to pass out. And my daughter knows I'm heat sensitive. And she's like, Mom, are you okay? And there was a lady who sat down. Well, then I realized, oh, I think she is trans. And so she said, Are you okay? And we started talking. Well, it turns out, guess what? She made her transition when she was 17 years old. She was one of the first people who did. We had this great conversation. I'm going to have her on the show. And
Cool.
she said, You are just super cool. And guess what I do now? I travel the world. She was on her way to Paris. I travel the world and I teach people about what it is to really be inclusive on all levels, not just racial inclusion. How cool is that?
That's very cool. That is very cool.
And she gave me a hair clip, which I still have, Dr. Steven. I had run out of hair clips and she gave me a hair
Nice.
clip.
Nice.
And my daughter said, she said, Mom, I think she was a man originally. I said, yeah, she was. But on the outside, and she is who she is now. She is and has been since she was just a little older than you. You know, the body's just a shell. This is the thing. The
Yep.
body is just a shell. It's a rental car, y'all. I mean, we got this rental car for this lifetime. If you think that your body is better than somebody's body because it's from the United States, or it's black, or it's white, or it's yellow, whatever it is, you know, well, that's just dumb, right?
Yeah, it's a bunch of horse hockey.
Horse hockey. It's a bunch of bullshit. Let's say
Okay.
it. Speak it.
It's
say
bullshit.
It. It's bullshit. Bullshit on that. Bullshit. I say bullshit to that. So here, you all, I want you to get out of your comfort zone. Let's give them some ideas as we wrap up, Dr. Steven. Let's give them ideas about how they could get out of their comfort zone. I want you to go to, if you're a Christian, I want you to go to a synagogue this Sunday.
Yeah.
If
Great.
you're black, I want you to go to a predominantly white church. If you're white, I want you to go to a predominantly black church. Oh, yes.
How about going to a Muslim ceremony?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
I mean, going from Christianity to Judaism, that's not a big step. That's pretty easy.
No, get really out there.
But go or to a Buddhist.
There you go. Go sit satsang with somebody. Do a meditation. You know, I have gone to some things with some gurus that were just so interesting. And I did it because I wanted to learn. You know, I just wanted to learn and went with an open mind. And, you know, truth is everywhere. Well, in terms of your business, let me just say this. Go on Meetup, you all. I don't care who you are, what you do, how you look. I want you to find a group that's different than you and go be a part of it. Join it. Join it.
You might learn something.
Maybe there's a women's group and they'll let you in. By the way, Dr. Steven, I would love to invite you to come and be part of my Women in Business Make It Happen group. I have some men in there who are just incredible, supportive men like you. And I want you to come and be a part of that. Just like when I was teaching women's studies, you know, I said, let's have the guys in here because guess what? Otherwise, women's studies over here to the side. African-American studies is over here to the side, and the canon remains a hegemonical white male thing. You know, we got to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. And the way that happens is we go into different communities radically different from our own. And I don't mean you have to go join the Hells Angels or a gang and kill people, right? Not all gangs do that, but you know, I mean, just go and experience. Maybe if you're Christian, go to a pagan ceremony and see what it's like. By the way, the Christmas tree was a pagan tradition, just saying. So get outside of your own comfort zone in your identity, and you'll find this will enrich you and the way that you're able to communicate with people so that you become infinitely more relatable.
And you'll make more money.
And you'll make more money. And you'll make more money. That's the icing on the cake. And you'll start to dispel some of this us and them mentality that truthfully creates all the problems we have on this planet. Think about it. It's always an us and them. Always an us and them. Dr. Steven, you have just given us so much to ponder. And I hope I haven't talked too much because I'm passionate about the subject too, just saying.
Well, no, it's great. Great conversation.
Subject, but I love how you've given us so much. I've put some of your comments over here. I've also, let's give them the Gratitude Network website. What is the Gratitude Network website so they can see this amazing organization that helps youth and children in over 60 countries?
It's gratitude-network.org.
Network.org. And I know that you do a lot of volunteer coaching with that group. I know that you all are looking for some coaches who would like to volunteer.
We absolutely are. We look for experienced executive coaches. We had over 1,500 applications this last year for our 35 slots of fellowship.
Wow.
and as I said, the companies are all over the world. We help the executive director with a year of executive coaching. The founder, the executive director, whoever the organizational leader is. And we also have a scaling program. So we help the organization figure out how to scale, and that's based on the Rockefeller habits. And really powerful material. So
So
love
you
to
had
have some people.
1,500 applications and there were 35 fellowships.
That's right.
That's amazing. So people, you all definitely want to check that out. And it's not just for people in other countries, it's for folks in the US too, right?
About 30% of our the organizations are here in the US, and then the rest are overseas. Somewhere around 75% are women, of the leaders are women, and about that many percentage, around 70, 2/3 to 3/4 are people of color.
Nice.
So we are a very diverse group, supporting, again, these are organizations that are helping children and youth all over the world.
Give us a couple of examples from like the past folks who've had fellowships, if you would. Anybody
Sure.
come to mind that you'd like to share?
I'd love to. There was a gentleman, African American, running an organization in Oakland, California, right here in our backyard, and they were helping underperforming schools do better. And they'd been in that organization, in that community for like 25 years, and they were looking for a way to scale. And through the conversation with his coach, they changed their business model a little bit, and within a year and a half, they had tripled in size. They were in Nevada, they were in Philadelphia, they were in conversation with one of the boroughs in New York.
Nice.
And about 2.5 years after they ended their year of fellowship, they were awarded a $12 million grant from the Gates Foundation.
Yes.
all of that, he said, because of the interaction with the Gratitude Network.
That's amazing.
There's another woman who works with kids in Africa. I don't remember the country, but she does it through dance and helps the kids find self-expression and freedom of movement. And that translates into life. I know of other organizations that work with kids that play soccer. And there's a male-female disparity that happens.
Yes.
Incredible all over the world, right? The men's team, except here in the US, right? And we're watching
it's still there, but it's changing.
The World Cup. It's changing. But for years, because of Title IX, the US had real organized sports in colleges, and that's why the women in the US, women in soccer, but in some of these other countries, the men get to play soccer, the women have to watch.
Exactly.
And that's changing. And so there are organizations that help, girls organize soccer clubs.
And it's so important to have the team sports. I didn't have it. There was none of that, Stephen, when I was growing up. So I was like, I would ride horses. There was no team I could be on. And I was definitely not cheerleader material. Oh, no. You won't see me in one of those little skirts doing, though I'm a cheerleader for people all the time with the big, bold, powerful Barnsley, but not in that little outfit doing no, I don't think so.
The pom-poms
I do have pom-poms back here though, Stephen. I have a pom-poms that I do for my clients sometimes. They're even woohoo, pom-poms, woo! So, Stephen, you have given us so much to think about, and I want to give everybody an assignment, and that is you get out of your comfort zone. So go into a community that's radically different from your own. Go into a business group that's composed of people radically different from you, and experience that community with an open mind and with curiosity, as you pointed out, Dr. Stephen, and with questions and openness and humility. And we can actually, I just got so excited, I knocked my microphone over. We can actually change the world this way. We put on the explorer hat, right?
Absolutely.
I love it. So, Stephen, do you have a freebie that you want to give everybody? Because I do, but what do you want to give them?
So I think the best thing to do is to go to profitminds.net and download my book,
Hmm.
the Mind Your Profits, and it will help you understand some of the strategies that I use to work with some of my clients about how to grow their business.
Love it. Because I just want to emphasize to you all, Dr. Stephen gives a lot of his time to the Gratitude Network. That is his labor of love in terms of volunteerism. And he has Profit Minds, which is his for profit business. You can get his free ebook at profitminds.net, which I'm putting in the comments, profitminds.net. And also, I got a freebie for you too. Who's excited? Give us some hearts. Woo! Woo!
Woo!
Give us hearts, hearts, hearts. So go to Spirited, SPIRITED dash solutions with an S on it.com, spirited solutions.com, and you can download my complimentary book as well, so you can read all weekend. How to Overcome Overwhelm in 7 Easy Steps. Mine's funny, by the way. Y'all will want to take it into the bathroom and you'll be cracking up and they'll be like, why is she laughing in the bathroom? Because it's informative but fun. What were
That
you going to
sounds
say,
good.
Stephen?
No, that sounds great. I'm looking
You
forward to
have
reading
been
it.
amazing. You have been an amazing guest. You've given us so much to think about. And those of you who got on here a bit later, I hope you'll go back and listen to the whole thing. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Subscribe here. Share it with someone else. Share it with somebody you know is leaving money on the table
There you
in their
go.
business because they're not thinking about the fact that, for example, in North Carolina, there are more Hispanic immigrants even than in California. Did you know that, Dr. Stephen?
Wow. I
Yeah.
did not.
So if you're not catering to that community, guess what? You're missing out. Yeah. So anyway, you all, it's been great as always to be here. Thank you, Dr. Stephen. Go to profitminds.net, get his free book. We thank you for giving us your wisdom and show us your hats one more time for those of us who might have missed your colonizer's hat.
Don't
Let's do
don't don't wear that.
Vanna. Don't wear that. What do you want to wear instead, Dr. Stephen?
Be the explorer.
Your hat.
Be curious
Be curious, humble, and
and
adventurous,
have fun.
and have fun with it. Remember, when you take away our skin, we're all the same underneath. This has been Big, Bold. I just added big, bold, badass business owners. Well, we could be big too.
Yeah.
Bold, badass business owners show with Dr. Barnsley Brown. Thank you for tuning in. Subscribe, like, and share it, and come back next Friday at 4:30. We'll see you then.
Bye.